All right, and so the lunar excursion module then descends to the surface with Buzz and Neil in it. Okay? Now the scariest landing that they had was the very first one, Apollo 11. Why? Because as they're coming down to the surface, they had computers on board, but their computers were so low power compared to nowadays. One simple, tiny, cheapest little calculator you get had more power than they had on the computers on the lunar excursion module at the time. And so it was totally overloaded. In fact, you kept getting errors. It was like a bus error, which means it's saying, I'm getting too much data, I can't keep up. So they missed the spot, this nice smooth spot where they were supposed to land. They were supposed to land in the smooth spot, but they had missed it because of the computer not reacting at the right time. So it started to come down, but there was this rocky boulder field here, and that's where they were coming down to. Neil looks out the window and goes, oh, we don't want to land there. That's not good. Because if you land on a rock, you might tip sideways, you might never get off again, break the thing. So he took over and he actually manually flew it downrange because he said, oh, I can see out there there's a nice smooth spot. So he flew it by hand downrange. But as he's doing this, they start running out of fuel. And the fuel warnings start going out. First it says 60 seconds, then it says 30 seconds, and they have landed. And all the guys in Houston are going, uh-oh. Because all they could see was that they were running out of fuel and they weren't on the ground yet. And so they came in and Neil, landing it by hand, landed it perfect with a few seconds left. I think 10 seconds left of fuel. If they hadn't landed at that point, they would have had to hit the retro rocket and go back up into orbit, and Michael Collins would have had to chase him down and pick him up again. They wouldn't have landed. But Neil was the guy for the job. He was like, oh, I got this, really cool. Landed it, perfect, did what he was supposed to. So we're going to watch a video of this, of the first landing, because some stuff happens during this first landing which is very interesting. And the cool thing is they add nice dramatic music with it too, to make it even sound better. And I'll upload these so you can look at them, a few different videos that you can look at just for fun. Sorry, my computer went to sleep. But here we are. Okay, stop again on the notice it's very low resolution, hard to see. You know what? That's how good the cameras were back then. And so the same thing as it is today is, as Americans, we do everything for the whole public, meaning they see everything we do. When it works, they see it. When it doesn't work, they see it too. Russians were doing their space program, but they do it in secret. We know they had problems and what they did, but we didn't learn about it until later, many years later, because it was all done in secret. So when something went wrong, they wouldn't tell the world because they didn't want anybody to think that they would ever fail. Where we're like, we're putting it out there. If we fail, everybody sees us. If we do it right, everybody sees it at the same time. Same thing nowadays too. We are a very open society as opposed to the rest of the world. All right, but here they are. This is the camera looking out at this, and this is all Neil had was a window about this big, a triangular window that he could look through. All right, so here we go.
That's looking good, down a half. Hit forward. 60 seconds.
That's how much fuel they had left when he said 60 seconds. He's looking at all these rocks saying, oh, I can't land there, this is not good. So he's controlling by hand.
Forward. 40 feet down, 2.5. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Right shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 6, down a half. 30 seconds forward.
30 seconds of fuel left. Still not down. Alright, now you can see the shadow on the ground, so they're really close.
Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Rocket 20. 75 feet. That's looking good down it.
Alright, that was video from the first one. And you hear the first thing that they said once they landed. They turned off the engine, said, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." They called their rocket ship the Eagle. And then Houston said back to him, said, "Contact that," or "we copy that. We got a bunch of guys about to turn blue down here," meaning everybody was just holding their breath that they wouldn't run out of fuel and they would actually land. So it worked out great. They came back. The only other problem they had was in Apollo 13 when the oxygen tanks blew up. And through some brilliant ideas, engineers working together, they got them back too, which was truly amazing. So, all right, let's talk about, let's look at a few pictures from when they were there on the moon. From current slide, right. So this is a famous picture here, but this is not Neil coming down, because Neil took the picture. So Neil Armstrong was the first guy that came down. You see, they came out of a hatch right here. And the first thing that Neil did when he got down, he stepped onto the pad, which was just the metal pad on the ground, and then he said, "Okay, can I get back up?" They were worried because, you know, all this stuff and gear and the astronauts together weighed 300 pounds. Like, can I get that? Because it was a big step up. But he pulled himself back up and he said, "Oh yeah, this is okay." Because he didn't want to walk off and then both of them come down and they couldn't get back into the to the lunar excursion module. So that worked great. Notice this is covered actually in gold foil, because that works really well to keep the sun's heat from overheating it and it doesn't deteriorate out in space. This is Buzz stepping off down here. You see these black marks? Those are part of the camera, the type of camera it had. They actually had a camera located in their front. You'll see the picture of their front. So they could take pictures all the time. In fact, they took hundreds of pictures. They only show you the good ones in all the reviews of it. But because it was done as public taxpayer money, you can see every single video and every single picture they ever took while they were on the moon. It is in the database and it's open to anybody that wants. In fact, I went and looked through it and it was amazing how much pictures they were. Most of them were really lousy and really boring, but it's all there. You can see everything that they took. All right. Again, this is Neil taking a picture of Buzz, but I want to show you a couple things. You can see Neil in the reflection of his visor. These visors had a gold coating on it, which they could pull down kind of like sunglasses. Because if you look toward the sun, it's super bright. And you notice that the sun made really long shadows. They did it when the sun was low in the sky, because that would keep the temperatures better. And you could see more definition in the ground because there were shadows. And you look, these are their footprints. Those footprints are going to be there for actually millions of years, because there's no wind, rain, or anything to make them go away. Now they do slowly go away just from micrometeorite impacts and the heating and cooling cycle, but they're going to be there for a long, long time. Notice in his suit here, this is dust. The whole surface of the moon is covered in about a ½ inch to a 1 inch thick layer of dust. Over billions of years, all the rocks on the moon that are on the surface get pelted by little tiny meteorites. Think of pieces of sand just bombarding it, and it breaks it up into smaller and smaller particles and essentially accumulates, and you get this dust layer that covers everything. Okay? And immediately, right when Buzz got down, the gravity was so weird in trying to walk on the moon that he fell onto his knees, and then the dust got stuck in there. In fact, the astronauts talk about when they get back in the exclusion module and they took out their spacesuit, they had this smell and they realized it was the smell of the dust from the moon. It was a very unique lunar smell. Notice that the sky is perfectly black because there's no atmosphere. From the ground to the sky is perfectly black. There's no atmosphere, so things seem closer than they were. They would see mountains out there and go, "Oh, those don't look that far away." And they were like 20, 30 miles away, but they seemed really close because there was no air. We're used to the air and the disturbance of the air changing things, and that's how we judge distances. All right, this is a famous picture of Neil's foot. He took this right away too because he wanted to show the dust and how thick the dust was and how it related to the surface. So it looks pretty cool. All right, here they are putting up an experiment. This is a much later mission, but this is a solar wind experiment. Remember we talked about solar wind coming from the sun, these particles flying out? Well, not only is it just protons and stuff, but it also pushes dust and other things. This is just collects it. So they just put it out there. They leave it there the whole time while they're walking around the moon exploring it. And then they rolled it up, sealed it in a bag, and brought it back with them. And the particles that were flying from the sun got captured in it. And it allowed them to study the solar wind as it came. These are internal reflections inside the lens. Solar flare kind of thing. If you ever take a picture outside, the sun's coming in on the edge with the camera, you'll get these reflections internally on the lenses. In the later missions, they went all the way through Apollo 16. So they had 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Remember, 13 didn't land, okay? So it was the only one that didn't land. But they had these cars. And these cars were kind of cool. Notice they don't have rubber wheels because the rubber would deteriorate in space. It couldn't last. So these are metal mesh wheels. This would point at the Earth. The good thing is the Earth always stays in the same place because of the rotation of the moon. Because it rotates at the same as its revolution, the Earth will never change position relative to the moon. Okay? So that was very good. They had cameras. They had a camera on the front and a camera on the back. Those were actually controllable from Houston. So while the guys were out picking up rocks and exploring, the Houston guys could move the camera around and see what they were doing. They could control that. They had suspension. They had the two seats right here. The communications were in the back of these cars. The cars are still there. If you went up there and charged them up electrically, they were run on batteries, they would probably still run. One of the missions, I think it was Apollo 15, they were buzzing along at top speed. I think it was like 12 miles an hour. But they hit a bump, and the bump hit so hard it broke off the fender of the wheel. And so they thought, we don't need a fender. And they start driving.